Bullies mock the quiet new kid. They had no idea he was an MMA champion. Elijah Evans adjusted his glasses and kept his head down as he navigated the crowded hallway of Westridge High School. At 15, he was shorter than most of his peers, with a slender build that made him appear even smaller. His dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that partially obscured his eyes, exactly how he preferred it. Being invisible was the goal, especially as the new kid who'd transferred mid-semester. Just make it to math class without incident. That's all I need today. He clutched his textbooks tighter against his chest and quickened his pace. 3 weeks at Westridge had taught him the fastest routes between classes and which hallways to avoid. The main corridor near the gym was dangerous territory, but it was also the only way to reach Mr. Patterson's advanced math class on time. As Elijah rounded the corner, a foot extended deliberately into his path. He saw it a split second too late. "Whoops," came a mocking voice as Elijah crashed to the floor, his books scattering across the polished linoleum. The hallway erupted in laughter. Towering above him stood Derek Tanner, a junior and star linebacker on Westridge's football team. At 6'2", with broad shoulders and a perpetual smirk, Derek commanded both fear and admiration from the student body. Flanking him were his usual sidekicks, Jason Miller, nearly as tall as Derek but leaner, with a patchy attempt at a beard, and Cole Wilson, shorter but stockier, with a buzz cut and a tendency to laugh the loudest at Derek's jokes. "Man, you really need to watch where you're going, Ching Chong," Derek said, high-fiving Jason while Cole snickered. Elijah's jaw tightened at the racist remark, but he remained silent as he gathered his scattered belongings. He'd been called worse, much worse. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" Jason chimed in, kicking one of Elijah's notebooks further down the hall. A small crowd had formed, some students watching uncomfortably, others filming with their phones, but none stepping in to help. Miss Alvarez, the Spanish teacher, poked her head out of her classroom. "What's going on out here? Everyone get to class, now!" The crowd dispersed quickly, including Derek and his friends, who sauntered away with satisfied grins. Elijah finished collecting his things, mumbled a thank you to Ms. Alvarez, and hurried to math class with burning cheeks and a familiar knot in his stomach. Don't react. Don't give them what they want. Keep your promise. The promise he'd made to his mother and Coach Rivera back in San Diego. No fighting at the new school, not after what happened last time. A fresh start meant leaving that part of himself behind, the part that had earned him junior championship titles in 3 weight classes and a reputation that followed him like a shadow. "Elijah, glad you could join us," Mr. Patterson said as he slipped into class 2 minutes late. "We're on page 94. Elijah nodded and slid into his seat near the back of the classroom, where he could observe everyone without being noticed. It was a habit from years of studying opponents, identifying patterns, weaknesses, tells. He opened his textbook and tried to focus on quadratic equations instead of the whispers and occasional glances thrown his way. At lunch, Elijah found a quiet corner of the cafeteria, unpacked his mother's homemade dumplings, and ate quickly while reviewing his physics notes. The isolation was deliberate. He'd learned that being alone was safer than trying to fit in. Back in San Diego, he'd had friends from his MMA gym, people who understood and respected him. Here he was just the small Asian kid with the funny accent, an easy target. He was nearly finished eating when a shadow fell across his table. "Is this seat taken?" A girl with curly brown hair and warm brown skin stood before him, tray in hand. Maya Rodriguez. They shared AP Physics together. She was one of the few people who'd actually acknowledged his existence without mockery. Elijah shook his head, and she sat down across from him. "Those look good," she said, nodding at his dumplings. "My mom makes them, family recipe." His voice was quiet but clear. "Cool. My abuela has this empanada recipe that's been in our family for generations. Food heritage is the best, right?" Before Elijah could respond, a glob of mashed potatoes smacked into the back of his head, followed by raucous laughter from Derek's table across the cafeteria. "Bullseye!" Cole shouted, giving Derek a fist bump. Maya's eyes widened in shock. "That's so not okay. You should tell someone." Elijah calmly reached for a napkin and wiped the potatoes from his hair. "It doesn't matter." "Of course it matters. Those guys are jerks. They've been terrorizing people all year. Telling someone will just make it worse," Elijah replied, packing up his lunch. This was a truth he'd learned long ago. Adults rarely made situations better, especially when it came to bullying. They'd either dismiss it or escalate it to a point where the target faced even more retaliation. "Well, I think you're handling it better than I would," Maya said, a hint of admiration in her voice. Elijah shrugged and stood up, See you in physics. As he walked away, he could feel Derek and his friends watching him, could hear their continued laughter. His hands formed fists in his pockets, an automatic response from years of training. He consciously relaxed them, breathing in through his nose and out through his mouth, a centering technique Coach Rivera had taught him. One day at a time, one moment at a time. You are more than your reactions. The afternoon passed without further incident, but as Elijah headed toward his locker after the final bell, he spotted Derek and his friends loitering nearby. He considered turning around, finding another exit, but it was too late. They'd seen him. "Well, if it isn't our favorite new nerd," Derek called out. "How's the potato shampoo working for you?" Elijah kept walking, eyes forward, focused on his destination. He opened his locker, exchanged his books for what he needed for homework and closed it again. As he turned to leave, he found himself surrounded. "You know, it's rude to ignore people when they talk to you," Jason said, blocking Elijah's path. Elijah looked up, meeting Jason's eyes directly for the first time. Something in his gaze made Jason blink and take an unconscious step back. "Excuse me," Elijah said quietly. "I need to catch my bus." "Oh, he speaks," Derek exclaimed, recovering from the momentary tension. "And with such perfect English too, I'm impressed." "I was born in California," Elijah stated flatly. "Whatever, man. We just want to get to know the new kid better." Derek's tone was falsely friendly, but his eyes were cold. "Like, why are you so weird and quiet all the time? Are you plotting to shoot up the school or something?" The hallway had grown quiet, the few remaining students watching with uncomfortable fascination. "I'm not weird," Elijah replied. "I just don't see the point in pretending to be someone I'm not to impress people I don't care about." Cole snorted. "Listen to this philosophical bullshit." Derek stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over Elijah. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" Elijah held his ground, his posture shifting subtly, weight balanced, core engaged, ready. It was an instinctive adjustment, the muscle memory of countless fights. "I don't think anything about you at all." The words hung in the air, sharp and dismissive. Derek's face flushed with anger. "You little—" He reached out to shove Elijah, but at that moment, Coach Briggs emerged from the gym. "Hey, what's going on here?" he called out. Derek immediately dropped his hand and took a step back. "Nothing, Coach, just talking to the new kid." Coach Briggs looked skeptical but nodded. "Well, take your conversations elsewhere. Hallway needs to clear out." As the group dispersed, Derek leaned in close to Elijah. "This isn't over, Ninja Boy." "Not even close." Elijah watched them go, the familiar adrenaline coursing through his veins, his breath steady and controlled. He'd avoided a confrontation, for now, but he knew from experience that this reprieve was temporary. Bullies like Derek operated on fragile egos and public perception. Elijah had challenged both today, however unintentionally. At home that evening, Elijah helped his mother prepare dinner in their modest apartment. Lisa Evans had moved them from San Diego to this small town in Washington state after accepting a position as head nurse at the local hospital. A fresh start for both of them after the divorce and the incident at Elijah's previous school. "How was school today?" she asked in Mandarin as she chopped vegetables. "Fine," he replied in the same language, seasoning the chicken. Cooking together was their ritual, a slice of normalcy they'd managed to preserve through all the changes. "Just fine?" She gave him a knowing look. "No new friends yet?" Elijah shrugged. "There's a girl in my physics class. Maya. She's nice." His mother smiled. "That's good. See? I told you it would get better." He didn't mention Derek or the others. Didn't mention the racist comments or the mashed potatoes or the confrontation after school. His mother worked 12-hour shifts saving lives. She didn't need to worry about him too. Besides, what would she do? Call the school? Talk to the parents? None of that would help. It might even make things worse. "How's the hospital?" he asked, changing the subject. As his mother talked about her new colleagues and patients, Elijah found his mind wandering to the equipment gathering dust in his closet. His gloves, hand wraps, mouthguard. He hadn't trained properly since they'd moved. The nearest MMA gym was in the next town over, and his mother's schedule made it difficult to get there. That night, after finishing his homework, Elijah cleared a space in his bedroom and began his usual routine, stretching, shadowboxing, core exercises. The familiar movements centered him, each punch and kick releasing some of the day's tension. In this small private space, he could be himself completely, not the quiet new kid, but Elijah Evans, 3-time junior MMA champion with a 12-0 record. His phone buzzed with a text from Coach Rivera. "How's the new school, champ? Keeping that temper in check?" Elijah smiled and typed back, "So far so good. Missed training though." The response came quickly. "Training is good. Control is better." remember why we're doing this." Elijah did remember, vividly. The last fight, at San Diego Central, hadn't been in a ring with referees and rules. It had been in the school parking lot, against 3 seniors who'd been harassing a freshman. Elijah had put 2 of them in the hospital with broken bones and concussions. The third had run away. The school had called it excessive force and dangerous behavior. They'd suggested anger management therapy and strongly recommended he transfer schools. Coach Rivera had been more direct. "You've got a gift, kid, but gifts can be curses if you don't control them. Your opponents in the ring consent to the fight. Those boys didn't. There's a line." Elijah had promised both his mother and Coach Rivera that he would walk away from confrontations, that he would find other ways to handle conflict. So far, he'd kept that promise, but each day at Westridge made it harder. The next morning, as Elijah approached his locker, he found Maya waiting for him. "Hey," she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "I just wanted to warn you that Derek and his friends are planning something. I overheard them in the hallway before first period." Elijah opened his locker, his movements deliberate and calm. "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure exactly, but they mentioned the gym class today. Just be careful, okay?" He nodded, appreciating the warning even if it changed nothing. "Thanks." During third period gym class, Elijah changed quickly in the locker room, keeping to himself and avoiding eye contact with Derek and Cole, who shared the same class. Coach Briggs announced they would be playing dodgeball, and Elijah's stomach tightened. Team sports were always problematic. Either he'd be chosen last, cementing his outsider status, or he'd become a human target. Today, it was both. "Evans, you're with Team B," Coach Briggs called out after assigning most of the other students. Of course, Derek and Cole were both on Team A, grinning at each other with undisguised anticipation. The whistle blew, and the game began. Most students played half-heartedly, dodging when necessary and throwing without much conviction. But Derek, Cole, and a few of their friends had only one goal: target Elijah. He dodged the first few throws easily, his reflexes and training making it almost effortless. But as the game progressed and more of his teammates were eliminated, the barrage intensified. Soon it was just Elijah against 5 opponents, all focused on him. "Come on, ninja boy, show us your moves," Derek taunted, whipping a ball with considerable force. Elijah sidestepped it and caught another ball thrown by Cole, eliminating him from the game. The look of surprise on Cole's face was almost worth the torment. "Lucky catch," Cole muttered as he moved to the sidelines. The remaining players coordinated their throws, launching a simultaneous attack from different angles. Elijah dodged 2 balls but took a hard hit to the stomach from the third, thrown by Derek with deliberate force. The impact knocked the wind out of him, and he doubled over, struggling to breathe. "Direct hit!" Derek celebrated, high-fiving his remaining teammates. Coach Briggs, who'd been distracted by a conversation with another teacher, finally looked over. "Evans, you're out! Next game!" Elijah straightened, his breathing under control again, and walked to the sidelines. As he passed Derek, he heard the whispered threat. "After school behind the gym, we'll see how tough you really are." The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes and whispers. Word had spread about the planned confrontation, and by lunchtime, it seemed the entire school knew. Maya found him in the library during study hall, her face etched with concern. "You can't go," she insisted. "It's a trap. Jason told his girlfriend there would be at least 5 of them." Elijah continued reading his history textbook. "I know. So you're going to avoid it, right? Take a different way home or something." He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "Running won't solve anything. Neither will getting beaten up. These guys are serious, Elijah. Derek got suspended last year for breaking a kid's arm." A faint smile crossed Elijah's face. "I appreciate your concern. Really." Maya stared at him, frustrated by his calm demeanor in the face of what seemed like certain doom. "At least let me tell a teacher or something." "Please don't," he said, his voice suddenly firm. "I need to handle this my way." She sighed, recognizing the resolve in his tone. "Fine, but I still think you're crazy." As the final bell rang, Elijah packed his backpack methodically. He'd made his decision during 4th period. Running wouldn't solve the problem, it would only postpone it. Telling teachers or parents wouldn't help either, it might even make things worse. And continuing to be a passive target was no longer an option. "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Coach, I tried it your way." He walked through the hallways, ignoring the stares and whispers. Some students looked at him with pity, others with morbid fascination. A few called out encouragement, though it felt hollow. They were expecting entertainment, not supporting a classmate. The area behind the gym was secluded, bordered by trees on one side and the school's storage building on the other. As Elijah approached, he saw not just Derek, Jason, and Cole, but two other boys from the football team as well. 5 against 1, just as Maya had warned. A small crowd had gathered at a safe distance, students eager to witness the confrontation, but careful to maintain plausible deniability if teachers showed up. "Well, look who decided to show up," Derek called out, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "I'm impressed, Evans. Stupid, but impressed." Elijah stopped about 10 feet away from the group, set his backpack down carefully, and removed his glasses, placing them in their case and tucking it into the backpack's front pocket. "Last chance to apologize for disrespecting me yesterday," Derek said, cracking his knuckles for dramatic effect. "I'm not here to apologize," Elijah replied, his voice steady. "I'm here to ask you to stop, all of you, not just with me, with everyone." Laughter erupted from the group. "Are you fucking serious right now?" Jason asked incredulously. "You came here to lecture us?" Elijah maintained eye contact with Derek, ignoring the others. "Violence doesn't solve anything. It just creates more problems. I know that better than most." "Oh my God, this is priceless," Cole snickered. "The little kung fu master is trying to teach us morality." Derek stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You know what your problem is, Evans? You talk like you're something special, but you're just a skinny nobody who doesn't know his place." "I know exactly who I am," Elijah responded quietly. "Do you?" The question seemed to catch Derek off guard, but he recovered quickly, his face flushing with anger. "That's it, no more talking." He lunged forward, swinging a wild haymaker aimed at Elijah's face. What happened next left the entire crowd speechless. Elijah didn't just dodge the punch, he moved with such fluid precision that it seemed Derek had missed by a mile. In the same motion, Elijah stepped inside Derek's guard, delivered a quick palm strike to his solar plexus, and swept his feet from under him. Derek crashed to the ground, gasping for air. The other 4 boys stood frozen in shock for a moment before Jason yelled, "Get him!" and they all rushed forward. What followed was unlike anything the students of Westridge High had ever witnessed. Elijah moved like water, redirecting attacks with minimal effort, using his opponent's momentum against them. A leg sweep sent Cole sprawling. An arm lock neutralized Jason when he tried to grab Elijah from behind. A perfectly timed sidestep caused 2 of the others to collide with each other. Within 30 seconds, all 5 boys were on the ground, groaning or stunned into silence. Elijah hadn't thrown a single closed fist punch. His breathing was slightly elevated, but otherwise he appeared entirely calm, almost as if he'd just completed a light workout rather than dispatched 5 larger opponents. The watching crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers, gasps, and exclamations. Someone had recorded the entire thing on their phone, the video already being shared across social media platforms. Derek struggled to his feet, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. "You're dead, Evans, you hear me? Dead!" Elijah picked up his backpack and faced Derek squarely. "No more, this ends today." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that silenced not just Derek but the entire crowd. "I've spent 3 years training 6 hours a day, competing against state and national champions. I could have hurt all of you today, but I chose not to. Remember that." He turned to address the wider group of onlookers. "And for everyone watching, standing by while others get bullied makes you part of the problem. Do better." With that, he walked away, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. As he passed through the crowd, students parted automatically, some reaching out to pat his shoulder or offer words of congratulation. He acknowledged them with nods but kept moving. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of what he'd just done, what he'd promised not to do, was setting in. When he reached the front of the school, he found Maya waiting by the stairs, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't even have words," she said as he approached. "Where did you learn to do that?" "San Diego Combat Academy," he replied, adjusting his glasses. "I've been training since I was 7. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why let them pick on you?" "For weeks," Elijah sighed, the weight of his broken promise heavy on his shoulders. "Because fighting should be the last resort, not the first. And because the last time I fought outside a controlled environment, people got seriously hurt. I promised my mom and my coach I wouldn't do it again." Maya looked at him with newfound understanding. "So that's why you transferred schools?" He nodded. "Fresh start, clean slate. So much for that. If it helps, I think you did the right thing," she offered. "Those guys have been terrorizing people all year. Nobody else was going to stop them." "Maybe," Elijah said, though he wasn't convinced. "I need to get home. My mom's working late, but I should be there when she gets the inevitable call from the school." Want some company for the walk? Maya asked. I mean, I know you can clearly take care of yourself, but still. For the first time since arriving at Westridge, Elijah smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'd like that. By the next morning, the video of the confrontation had spread throughout the school. As Elijah walked through the hallways, he was met with a mixture of awe, respect, and wariness. Students who had previously ignored him now offered greetings. A few even asked about MMA training and where they could learn. Derek and his friends were notably absent. Rumors suggested they'd been suspended, though the official reason given was violation of school conduct policies, not getting their asses handed to them by the new kid. During lunch, Elijah found himself surrounded by people eager to sit with him, a stark contrast to his usual solitary meals. He handled the attention awkwardly, unused to being the center of positive interest. Maya helped deflect some of the more intrusive questions, establishing herself as a protective friend. As the initial excitement began to fade, Raj Kumar, a sophomore who Elijah recognized as another frequent target of Derek's bullying, approached their table. I just wanted to say thanks, Raj said quietly, for standing up to them. Nobody else ever did. Elijah nodded, understanding the weight behind those simple words. It shouldn't have been necessary, but it was, Raj insisted, and now things might actually change around here. After school, Elijah was called into Principal Warner's office. He'd been expecting this since the incident, had prepared himself for suspension or worse. To his surprise, Coach Briggs was also present. Mr. Evans, Principal Warner began, her expression stern but not unkind. I've seen the video of yesterday's altercation. Under normal circumstances, fighting on school grounds would result in immediate suspension. Elijah remained silent, accepting whatever consequence was coming. However, she continued, given the context and the statements from multiple witnesses, including Ms. Rodriguez and several others who have come forward about long-term bullying, by Mr. Tanner and his friends, we're handling this situation differently. Coach Briggs leaned forward. I've reviewed the footage multiple times, Elijah. That wasn't just street fighting. Those were competition-level techniques. You've had formal training, haven't you? Elijah nodded. Yes, sir. Mixed martial arts since I was 7. I competed at the junior level. Successfully, I'm guessing, Coach added with a raised eyebrow. 3-time state champion in California. 12 wins, no losses. Coach Briggs whistled, impressed. Well, that explains a lot. Principal Warner returned to the matter at hand. You'll serve 2 days of in-school suspension for fighting, which is the minimum consequence our policies allow. Mr. Tanner and the others will face more severe consequences for instigating the situation, especially given their history. Elijah accepted this with a nod. It was fair, more than fair, considering what he'd expected. There's one more thing, Coach Briggs said. I've been trying to start a self-defense club here at Westridge for years. Never had anyone qualified to help lead it. Would you be interested? The question caught Elijah off guard. I'm not sure I'm the right person for that. What happened yesterday wasn't exactly self-defense. It was fighting. From what I saw, you used minimal force to neutralize threats without causing serious injury, Coach countered. That's exactly what self-defense should be. Think about it, at least. Elijah promised he would, though his thoughts were already racing ahead to his mother's reaction. She was due to pick him up after her shift, and Principal Warner had requested she come in for a brief meeting. When Lisa Evans arrived, tired from her 12-hour shift, but alert with concern, Elijah felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He'd broken his promise to her, regardless of the justification. To his surprise, after hearing the full story from both Principal Warner and Elijah himself, his mother wasn't angry. Disappointed about the broken promise, yes, but not angry. I asked too much of you, she said as they drove home. Expecting you to completely change who you are, that wasn't fair. I tried, Mum. I really did. For almost a month. She reached over and squeezed his hand. I know, honey, and I'm proud of you for that. But I'm also proud of you for standing up for yourself when it became necessary. The trick is knowing the difference between what's necessary and what's just anger. That evening, Elijah received a text from Coach Rivera. Saw the video, good form, kept control. We'll talk about the promise when I visit next month. It wasn't exactly forgiveness, but it wasn't condemnation either. It was acknowledgement that sometimes situations weren't black and white, that principles had to be balanced against practicality. The next week at school felt like entering an alternate universe. Elijah was no longer invisible, no longer just the new kid. Students greeted him in the hallways. Teachers who had barely noticed him before now called on him in class, engaging with his consistently thoughtful answers. Maya and a small group of others had become regular lunch companions. Most significantly, the atmosphere of fear that had permeated certain areas of the school, the hallway near the gym, the back of the cafeteria, the parking lot after school, had lifted. Without Derek and his friends dominating those spaces, other students moved more freely, spoke more openly. On Friday afternoon, as Elijah was leaving the library, he encountered Jason in an empty corridor. His first instinct was to prepare for confrontation, but Jason's body language wasn't threatening. If anything, he looked uncomfortable, even nervous. "Hey," Jason said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Can we talk for a minute?" Elijah nodded cautiously. "Look, I'm not here to start anything," Jason began, his usual bravado notably absent. What you did the other day, teaching us a lesson without really hurting anyone. That was, I don't know, it was decent of you." "Okay," Elijah responded, unsure where this was going. "Derek's been suspended for 2 weeks. Cole too. I got a week." Jason looked down at his feet. "My dad was pissed, but not about the suspension, about the bullying. Made me watch the video with him and asked if that's the kind of person I want to be." He met Elijah's gaze directly for the first time. "I don't think it is. So, I'm sorry for all of it. The racist comments, the dodgeball thing, all of it." The Saskia apology was unexpected, and Elijah took a moment to process it. "Thanks for saying that. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Jason nodded, looking relieved. "Yeah, well, don't expect Derek to come around like this. He's still talking about payback." "That's his choice," Elijah said simply. "We all make our own." As Jason walked away, Elijah reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. He'd arrived at Westridge seeking invisibility, a clean slate where his past wouldn't follow him. Instead, he'd found himself at the center of attention, his skills exposed, his carefully constructed anonymity shattered. Yet somehow, it felt right. Not the fighting, he still regretted breaking his promise, but the honesty of finally being himself, of not hiding his strength or his voice, of standing up not just for himself but for others who couldn't. That afternoon, he told Coach Briggs he'd help with the self-defense club. Later, he called Coach Rivera and had a long conversation about balance, control, and knowing when to fight versus when to walk away. And finally, he asked his mother if they could visit the MMA gym one town over that weekend. "I miss training," he explained. "Not the competition, just the discipline, the focus." She agreed, understanding now what she hadn't before, that fighting wasn't just violence for Elijah. It was art, sport, meditation, and identity all wrapped into one. Asking him to give it up entirely had been like asking him to amputate a part of himself. On Monday morning, as Elijah walked through the main entrance of Westridge High, he held his head high, no longer invisible, no longer pretending to be less than he was. He spotted Maya waiting by his locker and smiled. "Ready for physics?" she asked, falling into step beside him. "Absolutely," he replied, and for the first time since moving to this small town, he truly meant it. He was ready, not just for physics, but for whatever came next. For being Elijah Evans, completely and unapologetically, student, martial artist, son, friend, no more hiding, no more pretending. "This is who I am. Take it or leave it." As they walked to class together, he noticed a flyer for the new self-defense club posted on the bulletin board. Already several names had signed up. Change was happening, rippling outward from one moment of truth. Sometimes, Elijah reflected, standing up wasn't about throwing punches or winning fights. Sometimes it was simply about refusing to be made smaller than you are, about claiming your space in the world and helping others find theirs. That was a lesson worth learning, worth teaching, worth fighting for, in the ring or out of it.